Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. So in this video, I'm going to perform a fool's errand and predict what's going to pan out in British politics in the next 6 months. Things are up in the air. It's like the Chinese adage, may you live in interesting times. Well, chaotic it may be, dull it certainly isn't. So Theresa May has saved her leadership of the Conservative Party and therefore her premiership. So 37% of Conservative MPs voted against her, but she only needed 50% to win, so she's won. Now, many parallels have been drawn between her and Margaret Thatcher, simply because she's the only other woman to have been First Lord of the Treasury, or Prime Minister in common parlance. Thatcher resigned on the 22nd of November 1990. She stayed on as a caretaker for a week till a successor was found. But anyway, 45% of Conservative MPs have voted against her. So the majority of Conservative parliamentarians still backed Thatcher, yet she stood aside. The difference between 37% and 45% is not great. And as I said the other day, that some people who voted for May will have done so with the greatest of reluctance, and just because they didn't want to make the situation even trickier than it is at the moment for Brexit. So May's days are numbered, and she's already sort of written a political obituary saying it's just a matter of time, that it's 3.5 years at the outside she'll be Prime Minister. I think 3.5 months is more likely. So she still hasn't got Parliament to ratify this withdrawal agreement. I don't see how they're going to do it, because she was going to lose by a lot, like at least 70. If she'd been very close, within say 20 votes of victory, she might have had the whips twist enough arms. Corporations might have been able to din it into members of Parliament that they need to put an end to this uncertainty and move forward, because there's a bit of a political logjam here. So May is not going to last a great deal longer. Now, the European Union really doesn't want the UK to leave, because, all right, there'll be that £39 billion farewell payment, that golden goodbye, only if Parliament passes this thing. The UK could live without an agreement, in which case it's going to blow a massive black hole in the EU's budget. But more member states might leave and blah, 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 and it will hurt trade in the EU as well as the UK, and not so many European Union people will be able to go and live in the United Kingdom. And far more EU people are moving to the United Kingdom than in the other direction. So what next? So the EU, if asked, could we have more time on this, I'm sure would say yes, because they would really like to avert Brexit if they possibly could. And that seemed like a forlorn hope a couple of years ago. It doesn't now. As I say, I think it's probable the United Kingdom will not leave the European Union at all. Even if it does leave, it might be largely a nominal departure. This withdrawal agreement, in a sense, is only halfway out. So it's not the full-blooded Brexit that I wanted, but it avoids some of the difficulties and some of the ructions that would entail from leaving without an agreement. The sort of ideal agreement that I would like to see, well, it wasn't going to be offered, a fairly good one, still hasn't been offered. So who's next? May might choose to stand down as leader of the Conservative Party, therefore Prime Minister, but who would be next? Now, I'm predicting that Sajid Javid will be the next leader of the Conservative Party and therefore Prime Minister. Who's he? He's a British Pakistani chap who doesn't come from any privileged background, who's a self-made millionaire through Deutsche Bank. He's a non-practicing Muslim. He's married to a indigenous British woman, so he, in a sense, embodies this new multiracial, inclusive Britain. And he's like a right-wing fairy tale. And he's a Brexit convert. Having campaigned for Remain, he then accepted that the United Kingdom is going to leave the European Union, but like many people, I suppose he can claim he was penitent, say that we tried our damnedest to leave, to get a decent withdrawal agreement, we couldn't get it, so we have to go back to the drawing board. It's time for a total rethink. Who's not going to get it is Boris Johnson. Now, I know he's well known amongst the public, fairly popular, not as wildly popular as he was 10 years ago. He's seen as a glory boy, an egomaniac, like the thinking man's Trump. So just because he speaks Latin and has swallowed a dictionary doesn't mean that he's clever when it comes to politics, in a sense. He knew how to manipulate the media, having been one of the United Kingdom's best-known journalists for decades. But he's utterly untrustworthy, a showboater, an opportunist, saponaceous, a barrel of laughs. Never a dull moment with Bojo, but he's not good news, really. When he was Foreign Secretary, it said that Bojo would demand his secretary would give him a bojo under the desk. Don't know if that bit's true. And then Rees-Mogg, well, again, he is hilarious, an absolute fruitcake, but risible as Prime Minister. So he's got no appeal beyond ultra-Tories. David Davis has ruled himself out, is already too old, is seen as a curmudgeonly. Like Bojo, resigned over this withdrawal agreement, thinking it wasn't good enough. Amber Rudd, well, she could easily lose her constituency. Moreover, she's the one who ballsed up the the Windrush generation thing, deporting British citizens. And that's only about 6 months ago, so she's not coming back. Then Michael Gove was seen as a slime ball, dislikable. Even his own mother couldn't love him. Well, that's a bit below the belt, that one. But he backstabbed Boris Johnson, who's, of course, completely traitorous himself. But as Michael Heseltine said in 1990, he who wields the knife never wears the crown. Although Gove wielded the knife against his confrère, Boris Johnson. And then there's Philip Hammond, who's like blandness incarnate. He'd be like a May Mark II, a male Theresa May. So I suppose he's credible, seen as a safe pair of hands. I don't think he's going to get it. He went to my college, lovely chap. So there are many penitent Brexiteers and saying, well, especially the converts who are going to reconvert to saying, let's stay inside the European Union. So what's going to happen is Parliament's not going to pass this thing. May say, I can't go forward. So she might call an election, which she'd probably lose, and or call another referendum. She could say, I tried everything I possibly could. I said, no, and just have to do it. There's a growing chorus for a second referendum. I mean, Tony Blair has pitched in. Because Iraq is quite a long time ago, he's not as despised as he once was. So the European Union might extend the UK's period in the EU by another 6 months or 12 months. So whether there's a Conservative win or not in a forthcoming general election, there won't be Brexit because probably all the major parties, and you say even the SNP, will say we must have a second referendum to sort this out, probably till the Europhiles get the result they want and then bury the issue forever. Even then, Parliament's actually not legally obliged to take the UK out of the European Union, could withdraw May's letter to the European Union because it was a referendum, it was not a plebiscite. It is not legally compelling on Parliament to take the United Kingdom out of the European Union. Is Parliament remains sovereign, Parliament makes the decision, not the ordinary people. So, I think there will be an election next year, probably in the spring, it might be a little bit later on. If not, there'll be a referendum sooner rather than later. Either way, once this decision is made to stay in the EU or to leave it, May won't be around much longer. She's fatally lost credibility. She was never a particularly strong leader. I know she had a difficult situation. She can't be said to have been blessed with charisma. She's not dreadful, but she's not terribly inspiring. There's no such thing as a Mayite or Mayism. So she has not forged her own ideology. Anyway, so that's that. I'm predicting Sajid Javid will come next. Now, it could be that May calls a snap election and does lead the party into it because it's very soon, and they just think there's not time to pick another leader. Because if it's contested amongst the MPs, if it's contested amongst the ordinary members of the Conservative Party, that could take a couple of months, and there's just not time for that. A leader could emerge, a consensus, like when May became a leader of the Conservative Party, therefore Prime Minister, well, there's only one candidate left by the end. It only took a couple of weeks. So that could occur, but I think a lot of people would fight over it. If there was a consensus and somebody emerged like Sajid Javid, that was sorted out. So May might lead the party into an election, very likely lose, and then there'll be a Labour government, and then the Conservatives have to sort themselves out, a new leader. But remember where you heard it first, it's going to be Sajid Javid.